I find that song to be alright, specifically for the drum arena, but I wish it was a little bit more intense. I can't believe 3 arenas use that song. Should just be the drum arena. Welcome back to another chapter of Mortal Kombat Vengeance. Last time, our heroes just went inside the lost tomb of Onaga and his dragon army, his undead army, and Jax, Hanzo, Kwai, Kung Lao with the Fists of Ruin have actually cleared the way of the undead sarcophaguses, whether they'd be in them or not. And Katana, Aiko, and the others had noticed swarms of flies that weren't there before, and they turned out to be part of Draman, who was one of the Onis of the Nether Realm, along with his bulky partner Moloch. And believe it or not, Quan Chi's an Oni too, and Hanzo warned them they're no ordinary Onis, and they're not. So, being that Hanzo knew them from past experience in many encounters, he joined with Jax, and they defeated the Onis. Apparently, they just have a grudge with Quan Chi, even though he's an Oni himself. But they were unwilling to help the heroes, so as long as they cleaned out the lost tomb, they were fine. So, it's off to its next-door neighbor, the Sorna Ruins. Alright, Part 7, Drums in the Desert. And this is one of my favorite chapters too, you'll see. As much as Jade despised the Sorna Ruins, she still led the group out into the unrelenting Badlands. Everyone was curious as to how and why this particular desert was so dangerous, even more than the Yinian's own unwanted territory. With Aiko and Kung Lao, however, they found it baffling that the way Hanzo spoke about Draman's face of Kung Lao, it sounded remarkably similar to the former monk's own name. It's kind of ridiculous that the mask can be named after you, Kung Lao. But without the G and the A. Or maybe it was just a mockery of my distant family, he added with clenched fists. There better not be a face made after me, Hanzo intervened. Well, I'm quite certain that ominous mask was created centuries before the great Kung Lao, so it may not be too much of an insult. The gang walked outside the lost tomb and into the glaring sunlight which nearly blinded them. The high heat greeted the combatants as they wound up in the arid desert before they beheld its rocky, vast majesty. Whew! This place looks like any other desert. What the hell makes it so risky? Jade warned everyone this place was treacherous on account of the everlasting sandstorms. Even a couple tornadoes can touch down. The sky itself was patchy with the bleak clouds nearly covering over the blazing rays. You got any cold drinks handy? Sub-Zero nodded. With this dragon medallion, my cryomancy shall not be affected by the desert's harsh environment. Frost and I shall compensate if anyone would become dehydrated or irate. His prodigy nodded. After Kung Lao and others adjusted their attire by removing their dark garbs, they pressed onward to absorb as less heat and humidity as possible. Jade, along with Katana, still led the charge, even when the unrelenting thermal sun kept bearing down on them. Jax, Kwai, Hanzo, Frost, and conveniently Liu Kang's spirit were the only ones who didn't grow fatigued, nor seething from it. At times they needed to pause for several moments to take in the cryomancer's soothing chilly air. Even Lao participated, as he used his buzzsaw hat as a big fan to cool off the team. So too with Katana's own steel fans. Those uncomfortable factors made the traverse throughout the everlasting dunes and challenging landscape. Yet still, some were growing weary, as they kept having déjà vu. That was until they became galled by the loose sand being tossed into their faces. Everybody had to shield their faces as they continued forward, especially when they spotted a stray tornado taking form just several feet away. It was definitely a startling sight, especially to those who were unfamiliar with them, including Johnny, Sonia, Aiko, and Jax. Even the colossal height was a bit too much for the cardiokinetic. Due to her uneasiness, he hid behind her beloved, and wondered if Kung Lao can decimate it. He adjusted his hat as tightly as possible, wearing a tense complexion, before he marched closer while departing from the stupefied group. He was fearless and determined as he handed over loose dragon amulet to her. His mind then flashed back to his trials with Fusion at its own training ground, the Wind World, during one summer before the war against Shinnok. Lao had the chance to disable an F3 tornado from its core within the American plains. Not without the God of Wind's assistance, of course, much to Lao's discontent. Lord Fusion, if only you were here. It's about time! Stormed toward the Dust Devil, much to the horror. Before ducking below the sands with his teleport, his body illuminated in a cerulean aura as he conjured as much might as if he would execute a brutality. You're never gonna let... In fact, he performed with all his strength with the tornado as he and his hat created the countering funnel. Only this time it was own spin cycle, with more ferocity as he approached the heart of the storm, with him and his hat slicing into pieces, thus disabling the twister in minutes. Good going, Kung Lao. Without a lot of stamina and Nightwolf monitoring from the exterior, keeping away deadly debris, courtesy of his ancestors' shamanistic abilities, Lao's whirlwind overpowered the storm as the heroes observed the cerulean aura emerge from the amber V. Little by little, the twister shrunk before his own expanded, and by the time Lao's aerokinesis covered the entire funnel, his burst. Lao's body was hurling down, and Katana's sonokinesis from her fans couldn't prevent the gravity from taking him. Just as his allies were too paralyzed to move, an unseen force stopped Lao directly. His still body slowly descended to the hard sands before he was released from that invisible field. The winced warrior was heaving and hardly moving, and his inner chest and arms were sore from the sudden impacts. First thing his vision saw was the same patchy sky before the light disturbed by an opaque male figure with short black hair and a blindfold. It is Kenshi, one of my favorite combatants, introduced here in Deadly Alliance. I'll do his voice as best as I can. That was mighty impressive, though foolish to decimate that cyclone. Before he had time to protest, everyone called for Lao's name and became relieved to see him alive, albeit weakened. Aiko immediately sat by his side, tendering him. Her comfort, or was it her cardiokinesis, restored some of his strength. The slim man rose and grinned, and Sonia was the first to identify him. Ah, Kenshi! Sonya Blade! Always a pleasure to see you, General. Jax and Johnny gave him a manly hug and a couple slaps. Kenshi actually recognized them, too. Who is he? Kenshi, along with the other agents, explained of his predicament. Years ago, he wandered across Earthrealm in search of worthy competition. Every time he found a combatant a formidable opponent, he would defeat him just to boost his pride. But on one fateful day, Kenshi encountered an elderly man with a pointed white beard and mustache. His name was Song. Convinced the combatant the great warrior needed a handy sword. Song led Kenshi to the location of an ancient and powerful blade, and he claimed that it suited Kenshi's power. But as he unsealed the well wherein the sword supposedly laid, he was overwhelmed by souls trapped within it, which permanently blinded him. After a sneer, Song revealed himself to be none other than the vile sorcerer Shang Tsung, whom Kenshi recognized from horror stories, and proceeded to absorb the released haywire spirits, leaving Kenshi to die within the tomb. However, the sword, which actually did exist, attracted Kenshi by speaking to him in his native Japanese language, leading him to the true origin. Through the ghastly image, the sacred blade originally belonged to a long line of great swordsmen from whom Kenshi descended from. The well was also the sacred resting place of the souls of Kenshi's ancestors, those that were stolen by the demon sorcerer. Kenshi spent the next decade or so retaining his senses, all while searching for his betrayer, a path which would lead him to the special forces. Kenshi's special abilities eventually caught the attention of Jax and Sonya, who at the time were looking for members with unique talents to join their side and venture into Outworld. With Johnny still being an intern, Kenshi jumped at the chance to pursue the man who had deceived him. After going through many tests and examinations, he was then accepted to join the Outworld Investigation Agency. Since then, he had been on a scouting mission to hunt down Cyrax. Both men were unfortunate to lose contact as they wandered aimlessly for days. Cyrax! She took out the missing piece, the arm console. He never struggled with his impaired vision. He examined the piece. This is Cyrax, all right. We saw some huge bats swipe him away. I, too, was looking for that rogue cyber. So far, I had no luck. I am sorry of your plight involving Su Hao. That traitor, along with the likes of that cheating bastard, will pay. Kung Lao grew curious. How is it you can still fight, Kenshi? To demonstrate, he slightly ascended an arm, and the same majestic sword detached from his back scabbard, and turned to Lao and sword toward his face. Kenshi turned it upright. Telekinesis. Power from the mind. The weapon returned to his possession. Aiko was impressed. Mewtwo! Everyone gave her questionable looks as if she was growing two heads. Wait a couple years from now, guys. You should know the reference already. I was on my way looking for the rumored airship named the Dragonfly. I'd heard word it's a fast method of transport, which could bring us straight to Shang's hellhole. When it comes to blindness, it does magnify my other senses. Everyone dusted themselves off, and ignoring the heat, they made a lot of chit-chat with the newcomer, including about the former champion's unfortunate fate. Kenshi was intrigued with the news. He felt sorry it was too late to participate in the first tournament when Shang disguised himself and made him permanently disabled. Johnny could relate since he was tricked by the demon's disguise as his late master Boyd, tie-in to the first film. Just then, amongst the growing gab, Aiko heard some subtle though powerful booms emanating from the distance. She hesitated and listened, then remained immobilized. As she hardly noticed the guys passing her, she eventually became dazed, almost as if she was about to fall into a trance. Noticing she wasn't close to him, Kung Lao hesitated. Aiko? Lao walked up. Nightwolf intervened. It's those aboriginal drums. They sound very much like us Motokans in Earthrealm. Yet, their message seems rather the unusual type. Those are the trial drums from the cliff people of Makeba. The giant percussionists beat their drums as the fighters combat each other. It is said that in the event of a tie, Konga, the biggest drummer of them all, will challenge both warriors. Seems like they have a lot of hunger for tension. Almost reminds me of the execution drums, how they beat harder and speed up before the victim should be brutalized. What is it? Lau couldn't look away from Aiko's strange demeanor. She seemed more lulled. They are summoning me. I must join them. The Dragonfly is within that cliff village. Then we have to go there. I can't wait to be rid of the Deadly Alliance. As if she was ordered to, Aiko suddenly slipped away as she ran toward the series of blenched buildings that outstretched as far as the end of the distant precipice. The team chased the cardiokinetic, who didn't seem to tire, toward the series of massive drums being beaten by several muscular, dark-skinned men. The heroes just stood there watching, each one with strange markings. Technically you wouldn't see the Makeba tribe, nor Kanga. It was mentioned, but you don't see them. That's very disappointing. They lost so much potential. Maybe the fourth snake can do a wasted potential episode? I would love to see that. Aiko grew more mesmerized as they hit rapidly while keeping the same tandem as if they were inviting her in. They were accompanied by a shaker but no dancers. This never fazed the rookie, but the other combatants were flabbergasted on how massive the strummers were. The one leading the Makeba tribe was even larger than the rest. He was smack dab in the center. Aiko treaded closer onto the circular arena shaped like another large bongo or djembe, and she bowed to him. The war drums eventually softened, and the giant came marching to her. Chieftain. Moccasin stomped like the Shao Kahn's feet while his lower shawl swayed. He was indeed the overlord. He wore numerous feathers, symbolizing he was a dormant ruler. Lowered over her, and she never felt intimidated, but rather aroused. He caressed her head and neck, and she let out a sigh. Back tingled, and her Padinda became tense. She slowly raised her head, only to have her eyes become translucent. Forgetting all her troubles, her thrall washed over as she stood up, her limp body. Aiko! Kung Lao called for her. Aiko! It's no use, Kung Lao. She's under the Makeba's thrall now. This doesn't happen often. The Makeba are a small primitive tribe, yet they draw in the more susceptible. I could sense her mind. It is deformed, and thus not as resistant. I need to release her from Kanga's hold. Kanga? Kenshi stepped forward. Kanga! Both warriors faced the blind man. I'll let you keep that foreigner, but only if I don't defeat you in combat. Very well, warrior, he replied in a bass voice that seemed alien to any Earthrealmer, kind of like Kotal Khan. I wasn't interested in him, but I think he's quite similar to him. He mentioned for Aiko to make her sit with his clan. Kung Lao ran to her, but the other spectators forced him back with their spears and knives. We keep what is ours. The young girl shall stay with us. If you should fail. Agreed. The exotic drums beat up, so Kenshi challenged him. Fight! Kung Lao couldn't believe what he was seeing. Not even his presence snapped her out of the Makeba's power. It was only up to the skilled psychokinetic. With his monstrous spiked and blunt club drawn, Kenshi kept avoiding it, never being affected by the might of the massive instruments. In fact, Kenshi didn't make a single mark. Instead, he conjured some psychic pushes onto the beast. It didn't matter much with Aiko's mate under attack. Instead, a thin grin appeared as she joined with the assembly, making her heart race and her genitals swell. She had never felt this pleasant. She embraced this tribal power. As her eyes flashed, she wished to become an honorable member of her new people, as her head and neck stretched while she beat rhythmically and orgasmic. Every clinching blow Kenshi avoided, he felt Kanga's body heat before he countered again with another psychic blast, making the chief timber. Yet still he became more arrogant and reckless as he kept closing in on the smaller guy. Whether it be Tai Chi, his katana, Kenshi kept closing in. He always seemed to counter and move, and to Kung Lao, the warlord's fighting style could be similar to Shao Kahn's, as he had a flashback dealing with him in his arena. He became impressed with Kenshi's quickness, despite his blindness. as if he was reading Konga's moves through his mind. Unfortunately, his lethal bruteness sometimes toppled the ninja over. Kenshi's psychokinesis was on par. Konga's wrath managed to break through it. He was caught in a stranglehold on Konga's bulky arm. While squeezing his windpipe, the drum sounded more rapid than deafening, as if his followers were cheering for him. Kenshi's flimsy hands became helpless in his mercy, and he barely managed to raise an arm slightly. He was actually controlling his sword. So, the sword actually stabbed Konga from behind, actually. His weakened body rose, only to cause his eyes to gouge out of his sockets. Konga's. That's actually the fatality Kenshi had. Not a bad idea. So, I really liked Kenshi's fatality. The drums immediately stopped as the audience roared in disgust of their fallen master. Kenshi then faced Aiko, who remained still before her head was covered in the psychic field. Her eyes returned to normal. He then spoke into her lover's mind. "Kung Lao, get Aiko out of here!" At first he was shocked, but he composed. Teleported below the crowd, retrieved her and warped back. "Get her and everyone to safety! I'll steal the Dragonfly!" Lao made it an altercation. Kenshi dashed into the village, making the bloodthirsty men chase him. The Makeba were on his tail. Kenshi made it to the topmost rooftop, and he used his psychokinesis to halt them. Kung Lao carried Aiko in his arms, bringing her back to the team. She was very dazed and can still hear the drums in her head. It was like, she said that it was like recovering from a drunken stupor. Lao reiterated that her new ally would retrieve the Dragonfly, and Sanya was flabbergasted he went in alone. There were raspy sounds, as if the air was being chopped. Special Forces agents instantly realized the sounds of helicopter rotors, which turned out to be the Dragonfly, had emerged. The wrathful tribe kept chasing after it, though Jax was eager to stop them. Again, never moving his mouth, Kenshi telepathically commanded her to climb aboard. Kung Lao teleported onto the main deck, still carrying Aiko, while Sub-Zero and Frost built ice. Using his hands, Nightwolf leapt onto the center, and so did Sonya, Jax, and Johnny. The persistent tribe never gave up as they shot their deadly arrows. Kenshi shouted to get down, shielding themselves from the lethal onslaughts while he steered the Dragonfly away. After a few moments of turbulence and the pitter-patters from the deflected darts, the heroes escaped while still heading northwest. Way to go, Kenshi! Alright, so they wished him a job well done. Lao couldn't help but lean over and kiss her warmly on the forehead. Aiko. You should admire Lao's love for her. Kung Lao, you are safe now. There were some whimpers from Makeba. Aiko, before he licked her face, she couldn't help but giggle. It's nice to see you too, Makeba. Nightwolf went to her. Hey, welcome back. Thanks, guys. Kenshi went to the group. You alright? I think so. Thank you. Laid a gentle hand on her forehead, reading her mind as if he was taking her temperature. Aiko appears to be her lucid self. Matoken was relieved. Who's piloting the ship? Jax is. We need a pair of durable arms for a little while. Her mind. It is truly something rare. God damn it. Well, here I go again. She was born prematurely, Kung Lao intervened. By 3 months. They had no choice, as her mother was going through severe complications. Then her doctors were negligent, diminishing her mind's vitality. She was born handicapped. The last sentence was the most difficult to say. Undoubtedly, Kenshi felt pity. I once had a family myself. I lost my wife to a red dragon attack. After I became blind, I wanted my son Takeda to be in the utmost care. I could only rely on a Japanese nursery, as Thailand was too primitive, and China would be too militaristic. Then, Hanzo said he found my letter and decided to let my son stay with the Shirai Ryu. I was astonished he decided to stay with us. If anything should happen to him or myself... Always the optimist, Nightwolf chimed in. We'll help you defeat Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. You did pull off some amazing stunts back there. Yeah. Thanks, Kenshi. Of course, Aiko. Who knows? Maybe I can help you enhance your mind, which would also empower your heart, if we should ever overcome the deadly alliance. But you must stay with Kung Lao. He would be the key. Faced the duo, astonished. He knows. He really is capable of telepathy. There aren't many gifted specimens like it. I think I can learn a thing or two with Keanu here. He left with Kenshi giving Aiko and Lao some time. He could have sworn he heard Sonya shout over the rotors. Keanu? You better not be reading our minds too, egghead. Lao then cupped the cardiokinetic's chin. You had me very worried, Aiko. I thought I would lose you. Smooched her. She could never resist Lao's warmth and comfort. I know. I'm sorry. I hope that Kenshi would help when it comes to my mental setbacks. He can help you. I know he will. But until then, we must put Liu Kang's soul to rest and save all realms from our greatest adversaries. With her tired eyes showing a tad of restored determination. You need your rest. I'll stay with you when you wait till you awaken. They made a few deep, passionate kisses before Aiko went to sleep and to rejuvenate her mind. I hadn't seen Snowblind yet, as I'm on the fence with the greedy X6 at WB, but I thought Kenshi was inspirational. I hadn't encountered a lot of people who are blind, excepting that kid cameo in Barney and Friends, Alicia in Fantastic Four, and Possessor from The Silver Surfer. It was intriguing since he's one of the home runners in Deadly Alliance. Even when I saw 616 Entertainment's playthrough climbing the arcade ladder, I always thought he was similar to Mewtwo with his awesome telekinetic abilities, and the fact he can break mind control, transfer thoughts, and have a nickname and inspiration based on Keanu Reeves. Incredible! Especially when there are two representatives. Actually, it's kind of one. I mean, Kung Jin is part of that community, but I thought it would count the blind too. No, just sexual orientation. So it should be Kung Jin, but it might be Fujin? Who knows? It should be. So that makes two in Mortal Kombat. And the fact that the Matrix and Mortal Kombat are currently WB properties. What a lousy coincidence! Kenshi was created in 2002. He was inspired by Keanu, specifically Neo, and while WB didn't own Mortal Kombat at the time, Neo also became blind in the Matrix Revolutions 1 year later. Actually, I discovered his son Takeda first in MKX, as I stated him in my top 10 characters I can relate to. Check it out. I find both Takahashis to be legendary in their own right, and I too had made an OC for the Fantastic Four, Terry Thatcher, as a psychokinetic. If only Silver the Hedgehog would have that kind of awesome potential. Longtime followers of mine think it's cliché, but in several of my works, I had used the concept of being in a trance by exotic drums. As I was growing up, I became entranced by them, even when I was little, to now. Several OCs and canon characters had that same effect, including my OCs Gavin, Tinsel, and others, using it like my Aboriginal OCs. And also the annual event, the tribal ceremony. I just get a turn on with those enticing drums. I find the Dragonfly to be fascinating. It's about damn time the heroes got a more handier method of transport traversing through Outworld. 'Cause come on, it's huge. Contrary to Shaolin monks, which was always on foot. Kinda reminds me of the airships in the Final Fantasy series. And since there were no dragon jets despite their primitiveness, it all worked out. I couldn't wait to ease the pace. Anyway, there are the songs for that. A little side note, I was inspired by Kung Lao's awesome abilities utilizing his signature tornado, whether it be the tornado kick, the tornado mortality, even the spin time brutality. So why not put his arrow skills to great use disabling a twister? This has never been showcased in Mortal Kombat, not even with the help of Fujin. I know I'm kind of obsessed with the film Twister, but still. Another Warner Brothers property. Take inspiration, guys! Should be showcased in the series. I just hate wasted potential, or potential, in Fort Snake's case. And I promise not to make the two cryomancers betray each other, as I'd read the Dragonfly's the place where frost turns. It won't happen here. So this chapter's out of the way. Hopefully, I'll get to the next one shortly. Even with my Halloween special interfering some matters, 'cause at the time of writing it, I did my undead enemies. Or undead characters, actually. So, what'll happen next? Find out next time. And I leave you with that enticing song. Bear the drums.